another thing that seems to be really energising political debate this week is the question of young men and what's gone wrong with them, in inverted commas. So this is a discussion which has really kind of centred on this new hit Netflix series, Adolescence, telling the story of a boy accused of stabbing a schoolgirl at school, based, I believe, on a horrendous stabbing that took place in South London not too long ago. And as I understand it, I haven't seen it. I understand you do, Claire, so you'll have to fill us in on the details. But the series itself kind of touches on these issues that have been doing around for some time about the manosphere, these kind of online incel and misogynistic influences, and so on. Obviously, the two words that we can never escape, Andrew Tate, seem to constantly float around this particular discussion. Claire, what have you made of? Well, tell us a bit about what you think what the series is like, but also the chatter that seems to surround it.
Yeah, I think it's very important we distinguish between those two things, because this is a brilliant drama, on anyone's, on whichever way. As a work of art, fantastic acting. There's this one take filming, but it is, incredibly impressive that anyone's gone through that, and it's insightful, it's perceptive. I don't know how they pulled it off, and there's kind of like an emotional wreck at the end of it. But having said that, it was also so human, and I understood things that I hadn't understood before. It's what art does, right? Mm-hmm. And it's this tragedy of a young boy, and it's not a question of giving the end away, but a young boy and being accused of this terrible crime and the impact that has on his family, on his school, on everything. What does it all mean is what they ask. Now, one thing that's interesting about chatter around things is I don't even think the words Andrew Tate are in it. I mean, I don't have it right. I don't know. I think manosphere might appear once.
Yeah.
Incel definitely appears quite a bit. But it's the kind of revelation where kind of like the police officer who's got a son at the same school as the boy starts, discovers what emojis stand for, and it's like, oh. And the son, it's the son who says, Dad, you're making a right fool of yourself here. Mm-hmm. What you've got to do is look at his Insta page, and then you'll see that he's been. So it's slightly more complicated than the debate around it. One thing I've really objected to is that it's now being said that this should be sent into every school because it will help every, and obviously you think, well, you didn't say that about that fantastic docudrama, but that drama about the grooming gangs. I mean, the actual drama of the three girls. I mean, that was the most. I mean, at the time, that completely blew my mind, and they didn't recommend that we showed it in every school, or maybe we should have done. But on the other hand, I kind of think we shouldn't, because they're dramas and people can watch them, and so it's been turned into a political issue, and we can discuss that. But by both sides, that's what I was going to say, because then we've got people who say don't watch it because it's propaganda that white boys are the problem, and this is based on a true story, which we're not sure if it is, by the way, of a terrible incident, murder, and he was black, so why isn't he black? It's like, oh, for God's sake, everybody! I didn't even think about what colour he was when I was watching it. That's not really what it's about. And by the way, it is also true that the majority of people who live in the UK are white. And so therefore you're allowed to have a drama with a white boy in it, and a white family. And it doesn't mean that it's saying that they're all... this is not a demonising in the way that people are implying. It's maybe what's happening where you don't quite know what your kid's doing in the bedroom. I know that we were thinking at some point about discussing lockdown this evening, and then we're not. Actually, one of the things that I thought when the parents at some point saying, we thought he was safe, like he was at home in his room. Thought at least he's not a bad lad out with the, scally going around. Obviously, what is he doing? Oh, getting radicalised, right? Or, being influenced. I actually thought about lockdown. The state forced all those teenage kids into their room. They weren't even able to go to school. I mean, and so I know it sounds silly. It seems to me that there is not a straightforward message in this drama, which is one of the reasons why it's brilliant. And it makes you think about all sorts of things, not least by the way that the school scenes, which are absolutely stupendous, made me really rethink a lot about how we do education. So I recommend it to everyone, and stop being ridiculous about saying, why is he white and why is he not black and why is this and all the rest of it. everybody should depoliticise it. But on the other hand, watch it and have conversations with your mates and with your colleagues about what it implies.
Do you think you can watch it with teenagers? Do you think?
You've got about 18 children, haven't you? So this is obviously touching on your.
It's not. Yeah, it's not. It's not graphic or anything. I mean, it might be hard because it's a bit like, oh, is that what you think?
Maybe.
No, I think
They start to shift a bit nervously
I
in their
actually
chair.
think
Yeah.
you should. Yeah,
Okay.
I think you might learn something, and it's certainly the basis of a conversation.
Just finally, Josh, to kind of focus on some of the chatter around this. I mean, obviously, everyone can agree that some of these influencers that we're talking about, whether we want to name names or not, are, horrendous, misogynistic. All of that should go without saying. But at the same time, do you think it's slightly reductive, this kind of idea that because there's a few idiots sounding off on the internet, airing horrendous views about women, that therefore even teenagers who are impressionable, but the idea that's going to that you just connect Andrew Tate to a horrendous murder and that's job done, as if you can kind of blame what culture that kids engage with or what influences they follow with
politicians
their
will do
thing.
that because they want the simple answer that they then can just point at Amazon or whatever it is. Tate is the symptom. He's not the cause of it. My kids, they are aware of him, and they sort of, they're smart and they can recognize, they can ironically appreciate it or not, and they all think it's a little bit naff now. And but then you've got someone like Gareth Southgate going, "Oh, we need contemporary role models." Well, what, like footballers with date rape and getting money for kicking a ball around? What is this? What you're saying is that kind of buying a sports car? Is this the kind? I mean, I know there are good footballers, but the point is, you can point to anybody and go, really, that the worst of that particular culture or whatever however you want to address it. So there is an issue in this country with boys. Forget just white boy. I mean, there are academic issues and in terms of outcomes and going to university and all that, but there is a masculine crisis in this country, of course, and that for me is partly down to 20 years of men are bad. That connects to it, and this is that there's not. Actually, it ties down. It's not even just men are bad. It's like it's the denial of masculinity, because whilst we've had the denial of women being different from men, like this is what this movement. There was a sort of the sort of feminists of the last 10, 15 years are like, men and women are the same, and that's been like the sort of mantra. And it's like there's, if anything that comes out of it in the next few years is this willingness to, hopefully, to embrace that men and women are different, and have you can obviously there's not, doesn't mean that a woman can't do this or a man can't do that, but the point is there has to be some acknowledgement now that there are differences, and that those differences aren't something to necessarily be ashamed of.
But by the way, I slightly disagree with you, but I'm not going to launch into that, right?
I like
that's a different discussion. No, I know, but it's just it's like slightly complicated. But anyway, I one of the things that's interesting in the drama, by the way, is that there's actually a discussion about, is this a crisis of masculinity? And the lad says, "Oh God, you're asking me about masculinity, and you're asking me about my dad, you stupid woman, because he's the welfare, or you're trying to misinterpret this." But I actually think one of the things I want to think about myself is, I do think things are difficult at the moment. We are getting lots of nihilistic incidents of young people, and behaving in ways that we haven't seen before. I don't think it's a moral panic. I think why are people wanting to kill people? And Axel Rudder Cabana is a good example, but there's been quite a number of them at the moment, and I do think that we have to have an honest approach. Of course, the politicians make me want to then say there's no problem at all, because they are now trying to ban phones in school. They're going to fine schools if they don't take phones away. They're going to use it as yet more online harms so that they can censor the web. They're going to now re-look at the Online Safety Bill, which is Act, which is already draconian, give Ofcom even more powers, and so on and so forth. And So rather than us having a mature discussion about if there's an issue and whether what are the reasons why there's young black kids killing young black kids with knife crime, but also not just confined to that, but that actually there's a broader, seems to be, alienation. I don't have the answer to that, but we're not going to find it by this over-politicised assault on young men and the crisis of masculinity. And you know, when they say we need better role models, and I'm thinking, we're all meant to say Gareth Southgate's a saint, aren't we?
Yeah.
I just don't think he is. I mean, know what I mean? Like, I mean, the coverage at the moment is, have you read his speech? It will change everything. Don't be ridiculous.